Hello, welcome back to another section of Three Little Words, a memoir by Ashley Rhodes Corder. We're on page 138, I believe. We're on chapter 8. Hope you've been enjoying this one so far. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the rest of it, and go back and catch up if you're new. Yeah, give me a thumb, comment what you're reading right now, if you're liking this book, what you'd like me to read next. I'm always open to suggestions if you have them. So, let's dive right in though, on page 138. This is chapter 8, Campus for Crazy Kids. My transfer to the Children's Home of Tampa was my 13th move in the 7 years I had been in foster care. Mary Miller told me I would be able to live with Luke again and promised I could finish 3rd grade at Boyette Springs, which made me feel slightly better, but I still didn't want to leave the Chavez's house because I was afraid the home might be far worse. My new caseworker, Dixie Elmer, talked up the new place as though it were a magical kingdom, but it sounded more like Lake Mag than Disney World. During the entrance tests, they gave me some sentences to complete. After I am afraid, I wrote, I will never see my mother again. And after my mother, I added, is on drugs. And after my father, I answered, I really don't know my father. Finally, beside I need my parents, I finished with, when I'm alone, feeling blue, and need someone. And what if you had 3 wishes? The intake worker asked. I scanned the room and settled on a stuffed tiger to stare at. I would like to be with my mother, be very well educated, and have enough money to support my family if I ever have one. I must have passed because I moved to the children's home in June. I carried a blue box. Its lid was stamped Tiffany & Co. At Christmas, Mrs. Chavez had been thrilled to receive a vase that was bought from that store. When I knew I was leaving, I asked for the box to hold my precious possessions, and Mrs. Chavez had given it grudgingly. Ms. Elmer lugged the garbage bags stuffed with my clothes into the administration building. A grandmotherly woman with a sweet smile spoke into the phone at the front desk. Ashley has arrived, she announced. I heard the click of high heels approaching. A formidable woman dressed in a long skirt held out her hand. My name is Beth Reese. I'm the director of treatment services, she said to the caseworker, then nodded to me. You can call me Miss Beth. She turned to someone who had come up more quietly in sneakers. This is Miss Sandness. She'll be your primary. The other woman, who looked like a college student, wore an inside-out sweatshirt, and she had combed her blonde hair into a taut ponytail. Hi, Sandra, said Ms. Elmer, mistaking the primary's name. It's spelled S-A-N-D-N-E-S. The D is silent, so it's pronounced Sandness. She wrinkled her nose toward me. I know, it's weird. Let me show you around, Mrs. Sandness said. She reached for my box, and I reluctantly let her have it. Don't worry, Miss Margie will watch over your stuff. Miss Sandness led the way down the hallway and poked her head in an open door. A man waved. Welcome, Ashley. At the far end of his office, 3 boys were tossing a foam ball into the hoop above the window. Apologies for that. The tallest boy called out. Where's she going to live? Likes Cottage, Miss Sandness replied. With your brothers. How long have they lived here? I asked as we continued down the hall. 3, maybe 4 years. How long will I be here? Probably a year, maybe more, maybe less. Most of our children either go home to their families or are adopted. Could I go home to my mother? Miss Sandness bit her lip as she decided what to say. In your case, no. She checked her watch. I want to get you settled in before dinner. When it was time to return to the reception area, I hurried back. Miss Margie was locking the door to her office. Nobody touched your stuff. Her eyes twinkled like the fairy godmothers in Cinderella. As we walked across the quad, Miss Sandness pointed out the 6 co-ed cottages, each housing 12 children, which were spaced around a circular drive. She indicated the building next to the playground. That's Con Cottage. Your brother will live there with the younger children, Miss Sandness said. You're going to be in likes with me. Our cottage has later bedtimes and more privileges. Children of all ages, sizes, and colors zoomed by on bikes. I had a bike at the Chavez's, but they told me I couldn't have one here. Of course you can. We'll borrow one from storage for you, and then we'll ask your caseworker to retrieve your bag from Mrs. Chavez. Oh, caseworkers never get your stuff. Ask Mary Miller. She's my guardian. When we arrived at Lakes, several children were climbing into a white van. A man helped the smallest one up. Miss Sanders beamed at him. Ashley, this is Mr. Todd. He's one of the staff in our cottage. Taking a couple of families to the movies tonight. A few more kids clustered around him like chicks to a hen. He winked at Miss Sanders and me. See you later, Ashley Gator. Is he cool? I asked her. Oh, very. Ours is the coolest cottage on campus. I followed Miss Sanders inside. On one end of the entrance hall there was a Lion King poster. Well-worn couches and comfy chairs filled the room on the right, where some kids were watching television. There was also an empty aquarium. Why aren't there any fish? Someone poured juice in the tank and it killed them, she explained. A man who was taking notes glanced up. Hey, I'm Mr. Irvin, he said. Welcome. A few kids were eating at the kitchen table. Are you hungry? He asked. We're having a pack-out dinner tonight, so you can eat whenever you want. Pack-out? Primary? Families? What language were they speaking? We'll get her settled first, Miss Sanders answered for me. She led me to my bedroom. Are you nervous? She did not wait for a response. Well, I am. I'll let you in on a secret. I've never been a primary before. On top of my bed was a new bed-in-a-bag with Pocahontas sheets, pillowcase, and coverlet. What do you mean by family and primary? I asked. While we made the bed, she explained that primary was short for primary caregiver. Every primary had several children in his or her family. Families engaged in at least one fun event a week, like going to a movie or bowling. Do you live here? No, I have a shift, but I'm usually here from 2 in the afternoon until bedtime. I showed her the music box my mother gave me. Miss Sanders says, this is very precious, isn't it? I nodded. Let's put it on the tip-top shelf in your closet. It did not take long to organize my meager possessions. Are you ready to eat? Miss Sanders asked. Pack-out did not sound very appetizing. I don't think so. Well, I am, she said. Let's see what they brought over from the caf. I followed her into the kitchen. She lifted the foil on some pans. There's fried chicken, baked beans, coleslaw, and peaches. Want me to make you a plate? I'm kind of picky. Me too. I don't like chicken on the bone. I can cut it off. I don't want anything touching. You can have separate plates. Was she always this nice? Or was this just how they treated a new kid? I wondered. She and I sat on one end of the long table. The food was not hot, but it was tasty. Would you like to take your shower early? She asked. It takes a long time for all the showers. Why? We have a lot of rules here, but they are for your privacy and safety. She handed me a neon pink bucket containing a fresh tube of toothpaste, a new toothbrush, and a small bottle of shampoo. With a marker, she wrote Ashley on the bucket, with fat dots on the ends of my letters. After my shower, Miss Sanders introduced me to my roommate, Sabrina, who was a year younger than I was. Sorry you couldn't go see Casper with us, Sabrina said. At first, I thought she was rubbing it in, but her wide eyes, like black olives, made her seem sincere. Crossing campus the next morning, I heard a familiar voice. Luke, who had just arrived at the children's home, ran full speed toward me and flung his arms around my waist. Mr. Tom, he called to his new primary from Cottage, this is my sister. Ouch! I tried to pry his arms from around me. Not so tight. Luke, Mr. Tom called. Catch! He tossed a tennis ball, and Luke caught it. Ever play tennis? Mr. Tom asked Luke. Nope. Luke shook his head. We can play after you unpack, Mr. Tom said. Luke threw the ball in the air and then scampered off with Mr. Tom. Relieved that I didn't have to worry about him, I followed Sabrina and Daphne, another girl from Lex Cottage who was a year older than I was and who seemed savvier than Sabrina. We waited by the administration building until Sabrina's therapist came for her. Therapy sucks, Daphne said. Well, I'm not going, I announced as we headed back to the cottage. Oh, yes, you are, she retorted. It's required. My therapist was Mary Fernandez, and I found her probing irritating. I planted myself in a seat in her office, crossed my arms, lined my eyes up with a crack in the wall, and braced for the Inquisition. How are you? She asked pleasantly. Fine. How's the cottage? Fine. When did you last see your mother? She asked to stimulate a conversation. I don't know. You look sad about it. I bit my lip. Are you angry? She pointed to a chart that listed feelings. How about any of those? I don't feel anything about it. Why? There's nothing I can do anything, is there? My voice may have vacillated too much. It's normal to miss your mother. Maybe I'm not normal. I instantly regretted admitting something was wrong. In what other ways do you feel different, Ashley? We sat in silence while my session dribbled to an end. Part of the therapy routine was playing what's called the talking, feeling, and doing game. When I landed on blue for sad, the card might read, when do you feel sad? This was ridiculous. A red space did not mean I was angry, or a yellow one that I was happy. The therapist's tricks might work on a dumber kid, but not me. Why should I discuss my mother with anybody when nobody had even given us a chance to say goodbye? Besides having to endure sessions with Miss Fernandez, I had family therapy with Luke. Luke was willing to play the games, although he would not follow the rules. The more he fooled around, the more aggravated I became. When the Merritts heard we were going to the children's home, they said they wanted to stay involved in our lives as an honorary aunt and uncle role. At the end of July, Mr. Bruce, the family therapist, invited the Merritts to Luke's birthday party in the therapy conference room. At one point, Mr. Bruce noticed me sulking. When's your birthday? November 22nd. We'll have a celebration for you two, he said. I groaned. I've been promised birthdays before that haven't worked out. Page 146 at the page break, if you're following along in this copy. Right there. To outsiders, the campus seemed like a prep school where adorable children lived in cute cottages and had excellent recreational facilities. Yet each resident had hidden terrors that lurked like sea monsters in the murky bottom of an unfathomable lagoon. Several residents had been raped by family members. 2 siblings had had their hands superglued to the wall and then were abandoned by their parents. Another's brother had been starved to death in a closet. Most of the time, our personal monsters stayed submerged, even though the constantly undulating water kept us on edge. Every once in a while, a creature's tail, fin, or snout would surface as some peculiar behavior. At night, Sabrina screamed out, "Get off me!" Sometimes I would awaken sobbing, saying that someone had been shot and that blood was everywhere. Others dealt with their demons differently. Sam would haul off and punch anyone who annoyed him. Leroy's trademark was scratching. Carrie was full of surprises. One minute she would be cute as a button, the next she would transform into a raging fiend. She plugged the sinks, turned on all the taps full force, and flooded 3 bathrooms simultaneously. She climbed down dressers, unscrewed light bulbs, and shoved hangers in the sockets until sparks flew out. Some days she might only stand on a chair and spit on everyone who got in range. Even though Carrie was small for her age, she was strong and daring. Trying to flee Mr. Irvin, she jumped on the ping-pong table in the rec room. When he tried to grab her, she dove headfirst and split her chin on the table's edge. A few days later, she tore off her bandages and plucked out her stitches. When the blood began to flow, she giggled maniacally as she ran around trying to drip blood on as many kids as possible. Carrie's weird laugh was a warning. Next, her head would bob a bit, and her eyes would take on the intensity of a wild predator. She was as flexible as Gumby, so restraining her was difficult. Once she twisted around and bit Miss Sanders' hand so severely Miss Sanders needed to take antibiotics. I was excited when a beautician volunteered to give the girls in our cottage manicures, because I had watched Miss Chavez at work. I knew all the procedures. As the manicurist unpacked her tools, I pointed to a tube that looked like an accordion. "That's cuticle remover," I indicated a stone. "And that's a pterygium stone." "Well, you know a lot," she said. "Would you like to go first?" "Why does Ashley get everything first?" Carrie screeched. Carrie grabbed a bottle of clear liquid. Before anyone could react, she uncapped it and threw it at my face. The beautician screamed, "That's acetone!" My eyes felt as if they were on fire. "Help me!" Miss Lisa, who worked in the cottage, steered me into the staff bathroom and poured water over my face to flush out the chemical. "Are your eyes okay?" "I think so." I blinked, "but they're still burning a little." Ms. Lisa was shaking. You could have been blinded. After that, my survival strategy was to mind my own business and stay out of trouble. As I was having lunch with Sabrina in the dining hall, she nudged me to look in the direction of one of the staff tables. You know who they are? I noticed a man and a woman chatting with Mary Fernandez and some Lopez Cottage primaries. New staff, I guessed? Shoppers, Sabrina said under her breath. What are they going to buy here? Us, she rolled her eyes. They're a family looking for a kid. They're pretending they aren't watching us, but see if you can totally tell who they're checking out. Nadine? Sabrina nodded. I asked her, have you ever seen anyone who seemed interested in you? Not yet, but I'll know when it happens. Me too, I replied with confidence. I began to pay attention to the mating dance of adoption. The staff told prospective parents something about a child, then permitted them to observe him or her during meals, campus events, sports, or talent shows. Which of the bystanders would I want as parents? My ideal mother would look like Miss Sanis, and I would not have minded Mr. Todd or Mr. Urban for a father. And I wouldn't care if my parents were Caucasian or African American either. I liked the women who wore tailored slacks or shorts, pastel tops, trendy loafers, and quality earrings like Mary Miller's. The men who dressed in golf shirts with the horse logo seemed the most well-to-do. If a family picked you, they gave you their album. Some contained a few snapshots of their house and family members. Others were elaborate scrapbooks depicting trips to Disney or the Grand Canyon and included formal portraits of relatives. I liked the ones that showed every room in their house. After a day or so, you would meet your family and your official period of visitation began. The chosen ones returned from restaurant meals and overnights hand in hand with their new mom and dad. Eventually, they drove off into the sunset with their forever families, or so they thought. Many came back. Sometimes it was weeks after placement, sometimes years after the adoption finalization had taken place. Workers called this a disruption, as if it were temporary, though few children ever returned to the same adoptive family. I remember when Ms. Beth sent for Daphne after school. Her brother and sister, who lived in other cottages, went as well. When she returned, she was carrying an album. My chest felt like it was filled with lead. Why her? There were 3 of them and only 2 of us. Her sister was just as problematic as Luke was, and I was not only younger than Daphne, but I had better grades. It was not fair. Then Scott started visiting with a family, leaving his brothers behind, including Ryan, who was my favorite guy on campus. That's terrible, I said to commiserate with him. I want Scott to have a chance. Maybe if they like him, they'll take you too, I suggested. Not many people want 3 teenage boys. I worried that someone would want Luke and not me. I always assumed I would be the one rejected because that is what had happened before in foster homes. But for the first time, I realized a separation could be permanent. After Will and Leroy joined Mrs. Sanders' family, I had to share her time with 2 troubled boys. I have to get some poster board for my science project, I told Miss Sanders one day while she was restraining Leroy. Can't you see I'm busy now? She snapped. I went to my room and lost control. I started pulling out hunks of my hair. Finally, Miss Sanders checked on me. Ashley, let's talk about what's bothering you. Miss Sanders rubbed my back. How could I tell her that I wanted her all to myself? Mary Fernandez started a photo album for me containing the pathetically few pictures I had managed to accumulate over the past 9 years. She pointed to one of Grandpa feeding the chickens. Tell me about him, she urged. I don't remember him very well. What happened the last time you saw him? I tried to find a place to concentrate my vision, but my eyes ached. I'm tired. I slumped in my chair and then blurted, he was shot. Tears welled up faster than I could corral them. During family work, Mr. Bruce showed us the photos the Mosses had taken the day we went to the beach. Luke erupted like a volcano. I hate those people! Mr. Bruce asked him, what do you think should happen to them? Luke had been running around the room, slapping the walls as he passed. He leaped on the couch. Marjorie Moss should go to the electric chair. He continued jumping on and off the couch as though it were a piece of gym equipment until the session was over. Many of the residents, including Luke, attended Park Hill School on campus, which was designed for children with behavioral or emotional problems. Others, like me, attended public schools. I was in the gifted program at Dickinson Elementary School. In October, the other pupils elected me student council representative for the 4th grade. Miss Sandus was thrilled. Next year you could run for president, she said. Do you think I'll be here next year? I asked. Since I had never completed a full year at one school, this was good news, except it also meant that the administration did not think anyone would adopt me. Although I rode the bus with several other children's home residents, I sat as far from them as I could. One afternoon, while standing in the bus line, I noticed 2 girls staring at me. Both were 5th graders. The blonde had French braids, the other had short brown pigtails. They both had on floral print dresses with lacy socks folded down over shiny Mary Janes and looked like child models in doll commercials. The blonde approached me hesitantly. Are you really from that orphan place? Yeah, so what? You brush your hair and your clothes even match, the other girl replied. The blonde asked, what is it like living in an orphanage? There's always someone to play with, I replied, and we have a big gym, a pool, and lots of field trips. The next day, they sought me out on the playground and brought others to hear about my life in foster care. I had a stockpile of Moss horror stories that kept them entertained for weeks. Soon, others chimed in with their own woeful tales. One of the girls said that her mom had run off with the mailman. A boy admitted that when his father got drunk, he beat him with a belt. Several divulged that their fathers slapped their mothers. After someone disclosed that his father was in jail for possession of marijuana, I bragged, my uncle is in prison for murder. To keep my audience enthralled, I developed a comedic routine featuring funny lines about my life. Every time my mother came around, she was with a different man. I paused for effect. The last time, she brought a woman. I really got them interested when I told stories about living with my grandfather. I went into detail about driving fast and playing chicken in the beat-up car with no doors and seatbelts. I thought I was going to die, I said theatrically, but I only busted my lip. When I had earned my place as the center of attention, I launched into the tale of Grandpa's gunfight. I made popping sounds with my mouth, then staggered around, falling to the ground in slow motion. I got shrieks of appreciation. I had just read a book about Egypt and was determined to be Cleopatra for Halloween. I made a list of all the accessories I would require, including a black wig and a golden armband shaped like a snake. Miss Sandus found hand-me-downs for the other kids and spent most of her budget on me, since she knew I wanted the costume so badly. Because of security concerns, we could not trick-or-treat in regular neighborhoods, so the staff drove us to dorms at the University of South Florida, where student volunteers decorated their doors and stocked treats as a community service program. Just like kids all over the country, we ran around collecting as much candy as we could, but we had to do so in this phony situation. Then we were herded back to the cottages, where the staff locked away our loot and doled it out later. In November, the Merritts showed up for my 10th birthday. Mrs. Merritt had crocheted a vest for me and made a pillow from one of the latch products I had made at her house. Luke, Mary Miller, and our therapist joined us for cake in the conference room. Luke ripped open my presents, tasted the icing before the cake was cut, and as he blew out my candles, he spit all over everything, spoiling every aspect of my party. At the end, Mary Miller said, I have another surprise for you. We went out to her car and she lifted out the bike I had left with Miss Chavez. Then she handed me a brown box. Sorry it isn't in better shape. I opened the lid. Inside was my easy bake oven. The original carton was soggy and smelled like the Moss's moldy shed. The packages containing the cake mixes were mildewed. What about my dolls and sleeping bag? Ms. Moss claimed that this was all she could find. I returned to my cottage fuming about Luke's behavior, my ruined oven, everything else that Mrs. Moss had kept, all my other possessions that had been left behind in various foster homes, and even the bike, which had rusted in the rain. I also wondered whether my mother remembered what day it was. A few days later, we had my cottage birthday party. Miss Sandus picked out gifts from among the donated clothes and toys in the storage unit. She bought me another cake studded with icing flowers and adorned my name with green letters. Everyone gathered to gobble the cake and ice cream. It was the same party we had every few weeks for one or another of the cottage kids, so I did not feel particularly special. For months, though, the excitement built around Christmas. In October, the staff had given us forms and told us to list anything we wanted. What's the limit? I wondered. There is none, Sabrina told me. What are you asking for? Lots of clothes, a music box like yours, a bike. You already have a bike. You can get one every year, she said, as if explaining something to a toddler. The lists are given to our sponsors, really rich people, even companies, and they go out and buy us everything. For the next few days, we would watch television with our lists on our lap. Every time a commercial would come on, we would scribble the toy on the form. I asked for Barbie dolls, children's beauty and nail supplies, stuffed animals, a new bike, and rollerblades. The staff doled out money for us to buy gifts for a few special people. I purchased something for my teacher, my brother, and Miss Sanders. On campus, the big event was the Christmas Cantata, a musical program put on by the residents, followed by fancy food served in the cottages. We all wore our dressiest clothes and were on our best behavior because sponsors and outsiders who might be prospective parents visited. Christmas morning was a feeding frenzy. We all dove into the huge stack of packages, grabbing anything with our names on it. Sabrina had been right. We each received most of the items on our lists and more. Foster parent groups provided some of the basics, and our sponsors bought the big ticket items. Everything was from Santa, so we did not know who had contributed what. Kids ripped open their boxes, checked the contents, tossed them behind their chair, then attacked another. Paper, cardboard, and styrofoam piled up in drifts around us. As we reached the bottom, the other kids' faces registered an "is that all there is?" expression. By the end of the day, half the toys were missing parts, broken, or trampled. Even though I tried to take more care with mine, some of my gifts disappeared into the tangle of wrappings. "Where's my French Barbie?" I shouted into the living room. "Sabrina has it," Daphne said. "I wrote down French Barbie too," Sabrina claimed. "Did not," I screeched. I gathered up as much as I could and took it to my room. But by the time I got back, Will and Leroy were playing catch with my softball and had already smudged it. I was disgusted and wondered why I couldn't live with a regular family and have a nice, quiet Christmas like everyone I saw in holiday specials on television. All right, page break on page 156. Living in an institution with a myriad of regulations, it was impossible to lead a normal life. When my school had a fundraiser, I was determined to sell enough to win one of the prizes. Miss Santa squashed my plans to go door to door in the neighborhood. "Sorry, it's against the rules." That afternoon, I grumbled in therapy. "You could show the brochure around campus," Mary Fernandez suggested. I started with Mr. Bruce, who placed an order. He offered to accompany me on my rounds. By the time I returned to Lake's cottage, I had made $150 in sales, enough for one of the better prizes. I gave the envelope filled with checks and cash to Miss Sanders for safekeeping before I went to change into play clothes. When I returned, Miss Sanders looked ill. "Ashley, did you take the envelope back to your room?" "No, I put it on your desk." My pulse quickened. "Is it missing?" "I'm afraid so. I was gone just a minute or two." Nobody found the envelope, and the deadline to turn in the order forms passed. I was more upset about accepting everyone's money and not having anything to show for it than not winning the prize. A week later, someone noticed that Daphne, who had not moved in with her adoptive family yet, had used a $20 bill when they went to a store. Eventually, she admitted to taking the money and made a half-hearted apology to me. I held in my fury for a few days. On the way back from the gym after a soccer game, Daphne kept trying to trip me. My seething started in my gut and exploded through my fists. I punched her above the eye. I expected I would be punished, but I did not care. To my surprise, no one ever said anything about the incident. Isabel, the other redhead in my 4th grade class, was my best friend. She invited me to go to her home often, though I was never permitted to go, not even for her birthday party. Because campus residents could be unpredictable, they always had to be accompanied by staff. I pestered Miss Sanders for a visit so many times that she finally agreed to take me on a playdate. Isabel's mother was tense because I had come from that place and needed supervision. The 4 of us sat in the living room, staring at one another until Isabel asked, "Want to see my birds and guinea pigs?" The room smelled like cedar chips, and animal cages and tanks lined the walls. Isabel handed me a fuzzy guinea pig, which I petted until I noticed the raisin-like poop on its fur, then hurriedly gave him back. Because Mrs. Sandness had to be on duty at the cottage, we had to leave after only an hour. This was the first and last time I visited with a friend until I went to my adoptive family. I had come to the children's home expecting to be gone in a few months, but a year passed without anyone adopting us. I saw a few kids leave, and some returned because it had not worked out. I figured that I probably would be there until I was 18, but at least I was not at the Mosses or with some of the other creepy parents I had heard about. I decided to take it day by day and forget about everything and everybody else. That's the end of chapter 8. Right. Video is not going too long, so we'll get a little bit into chapter 9 for this one, and then we'll call it good. All right. Page 159, chapter 9. Let's make a deal. In August, I started 5th grade at Dickinson Elementary. For the first time in my life, I was no longer the new girl. The school selected me as a safety patrol, and Miss Trujillo, my teacher in the gifted program, teacher in the gifted program encouraged me to run for student council president. This required speaking in the auditorium to all the students at each grade level. I asked Mr. Irvin for a hunk of accordion-style computer paper. When it came time for the candidates' speeches, I stood behind the lectern and let the paper cascade off the stage onto the floor. "Dear Santa," I began, "I would like a new bike, some Barbie dolls, a radio, and—" Whoops! I let a few more feet of paper tumble forward, so it looked like a massive document. "Unless our principal has turned into a jolly old man, I have the wrong speech." The first graders burst out laughing, and I hoped the gag would be as successful with all the classes. The results were announced over the intercom. "And your new student council president is Ashley Rhodes." Miss Sanders glowed when I told her the news. By dinner time, the whole campus knew I had won, and I received congratulations from every member of the staff I encountered. Neither Sabrina nor Daphne said a word to me. "Here comes the brown noser," Leroy said, rubbing the tip of his nose. Although his words stung, it was more important to me to get recognition at school than from the campus kids, because I did not respect their opinions. Still, I was hungry for attention. I was in my gifted class when I started hiccuping, which made the others laugh. I forced my air into my throat so the hiccups would become more obnoxious. "Go get a drink of water and come back when you have those under control," Miss Trujillo said and then asked me to stay after class. "Ashley, I know where you live, so I can guess you've had some tough times," she began. I thought she was going to lecture me about my past not being an excuse for poor behavior. Instead, she went on to tell me that she had come from a rough background herself and knew what it was like to struggle without support at home. Miss Trujillo handed me a book. "You have a lot in common with Anne of Green Gables." Reading the book, I began to see what she meant. Lucy Maud Montgomery could have been describing me. It also reminded me of Annie, the most famous girl orphan. I remember thinking that all of us had red hair, sunny smiles, plucky dispositions, and names that began with A. But perhaps Miss Trujillo also wanted me to see that some stories, like her own, had happy endings. At least twice a year, we attended adoption picnics. Even though there were carnival games and hot dogs and burgers on the grill, the real purpose was to display the merchandise. The children nobody else wanted. Some of the shoppers were discreet and stood at a distance. Others were chatty, even pushy. One prospective parent even poked me. A chubby lady ran her fingers through Luke's hair and said to her husband, "Isn't he cute as a button?" Then she turned to Luke. "We'd love to adopt you." "I'm going to be adopted," Luke bragged on the way home. Luke and I were selected to be on the Christian television network. A bubbly blonde reporter interviewed us in the arts and crafts room on campus. "What sort of family do you want?" she asked me. "Oh, I'm not too picky," I replied. "I just want someone to take care of us, to treat us nice, just a family." I hoped I had hit the right note, but Luke made silly faces and purposely yawned, stealing my moment. "What about you, Luke?" "I want frogs, and a baseball glove, and a mom." "In that order?" the reporter laughed. I'm praying that people will call, and if the Lord has touched their hearts, because these people are praying for a family." When nobody responded, I felt hopeless. I also had a few expectations for my 11th birthday later that month. It would be the same old cottage party. I would get a few generic gifts and then meet the Merritts in the therapy conference room. Whoopee. "Happy birthday," Mary Fernandez said when she came to take me to the therapy wing after my cottage cake. I did not look up from some beads I was stringing for a Thanksgiving program. What's so happy about it? Several kids threw cake, Miss Sanders said to explain my rudeness. My therapist had more bad news. "I'm sorry you had a difficult day, and I'm sorry the Merritts can't make it either." "I don't care." "Ashley," Mary Fernandez said gently, "Matthew Merritt was hit by a car." I dropped my beads with a clatter. "Is he okay?" "Yes, it isn't life-threatening. They want to have your party in his hospital room." Bruce Waslowski, our family therapist, drove Luke and me to Tampa General Hospital. "Happy birthday," Mrs. Merritt sang out. "Hey," Matthew said. "Thanks for bringing your party to me." Mary Miller handed out my gifts. The Merritts gave me a silver vanity set complete with brush, comb, and rotating mirror, which was the sort of elegant gift I preferred over toys. But I remember thinking that the disinfectant smell of the hospital ruined the cake's taste. I should have known not to anticipate a great birthday because I had always been disappointed before. Even when Miss Chavez hosted my 9th birthday party, it was spoiled by Amelia wearing the outfit my mother had given me. At my 10th, Luke hogged my candles and messed up my cake. Now even my 11th was a letdown. This time at least, Luke was more interested in Matthew's leg cast than in harassing me, but it was hardly the birthday party of my dreams. After a while, the staff felt Luke was mature enough to move into Like's cottage, but they were wrong. Although he was almost 9, he followed at my heels like a pesky puppy. If I ignored a request, he pulled my arm, tugged my hair, or did something so annoying that I pushed him away. I loved him, but I did not want him hanging on me all the time, so I went out of my way to avoid him. What I could not avoid was the irrational throbbing for my mother that came in waves. As long as I kept busy, I managed to skip over most of my feelings by reminding myself that this was another bad habit, like biting my nails. But during quiet moments, I could be overwhelmed by thoughts about where she was and why she had never come for me. Worst of all were the times when I couldn't fall asleep quickly because Sabrina cried out during the nightmares caused by her abuse. Mary Miller had told me that my mother's parental rights were gone. Yet I did not think that any official pronouncement would make the slightest difference to her because she had always returned in the past, even when the caseworkers had tried to limit her visits. I believed that she yearned for me as much as I did for her. There were times when this longing dissolved all my defenses until all that was left were tears that couldn't be contained. If someone found me crying, I'd refuse to answer their probing questions because I did not want to have to explain my feelings to Miss Sanders, Mary Fernandez, and Mr. Bruce over and over, as if words alone would bring my mother back. In many ways, the children's home was more pleasant than any of my foster homes, and I was not worried about them sending me away without warning because they had promised I could stay as long as I liked. I decided it would be better to remain with Miss Sanders, Mr. Todd, Mr. Irvin, and my friends than risk some snooty parents kicking me out the minute they tired of me. Besides, the only parent I wanted was my mother, and if I could not have her, then having nobody was better than somebody else. The cottage staff told all the TPR'd kids the obnoxious acronym had somehow become an adjective, that we were going to have our photos taken by a professional photographer for an adoption catalog. Mr. Irvin was surprised I was not ready. Hey, Ashfoot. He had given me that nickname because my feet were growing so fast. What's wrong? I lay in my bed facing the wall. I don't want my picture in a stupid book. How will a family find you if they don't see those cute freckles? I hate my freckles, and I don't care if I'm ever adopted. Too bad, because I know how much you like contests. My ears perked up. I had recently won 3rd place in a poster contest for a race car show. What contest? At the photography studio. The best drawing will be on the cover of the book. I guess I'll go, I said. That's my ash foot. He grinned. Just don't let them take a picture of your feet, or you might break their equipment. While I waited for my turn to have my photo taken with Luke, I drew a picture of two couples. On the left was a man in a suit and a woman wearing a long dress and pearls standing next to a 3-story house. Beside a ranch house on the right was a man in a t-shirt and shorts and a woman dressed in a blouse and short skirt. Underneath the picture I wrote, I'd love a family, rich or mid, as long as they want a loving kid. If they love me and care for me, that's all I want in a family. I was not very pleased with it, but nobody told me whether I had won or not. Or I was very pleased with it, but nobody had told me whether I'd won or not. On Easter Sunday, the Like staff took us to one of our sponsors' homes, an elegant waterfront mansion, for an egg hunt. There was a $5 bill in every plastic egg. Within a few minutes, some of us had had more money than we'd been able to accumulate in a year of cottage allowances. As we drove away from the upscale neighborhood, I stuck my head out of the van's window and shouted, Hey, anyone want a kid? It seemed as useful a recruiting strategy as anything else. There were several events on campus to which alumni and their families were invited. We suspected some shoppers were sprinkled in as well. One of these was the opening of the Summer Murphy Awards, the campus's mini Olympics. As everyone gathered by the flagpole for the Pledge of Allegiance and some patriotic songs, I scanned the crowd to see if there was anyone who seemed to be paying attention to me. I heard some laughter from the audience and realized that Luke had wriggled to the front and was miming the words to the song. Isn't he darling? A slim woman in tight slacks gushed to her husband. We have an annual essay contest, and the winner gets to deliver it, the announcer said. This year, the honor goes to the pride of the Likes Lions, Ashley Rhodes. I stepped to the lectern and began delivering the speech I had written in verse. Again, I heard inappropriate laughter. Luke was making faces. I wanted to strangle him, but I plowed on, and the audience rewarded me with resounding applause. Afterward, some children's home staff members praised me, but most of the strangers fawned over my tow-headed brother, which infuriated me further. At my first adoption picnic, Luke climbed a tree and refused to come down. I pretended I did not know him and went home with the first vanload of kids. When they announced the July picnic, I told Miss Sanders I did not want to go. Why not, Ash? She asked. They're like slave auctions. She waited. I thought the parents were going to bid on us after we left. The morning of the picnic, Miss Sanders came into my room and pulled out my favorite outfit. I love you in this color, she said. I turned my back on her. I am not going. She handed me the turquoise shirt and white shorts without saying anything more. I put them on, then went through all my jewelry, slowly putting on every necklace and bracelet I owned. She herded me to the van. The midday July sun beat down on Roulette Park. I felt dizzy in the heat and headed to the shadier pavilion. A little girl's pink balloon floated by my face, and I pushed it away rudely. Parents strolled the perimeter, gawking at us as if we were freaks. Hey, look at me, Luke called. He was dribbling his snow cone in the dirt to make a pattern, but most of it stained his shirt. I suspected that nobody wanted me because Luke was part of the package. Hi there, a woman came up beside me. May we get you a cold drink? I looked up at the couple wearing matching khaki shorts and polo shirts with the collars at preppy salute. Their name tags read Jess and Les. Somehow, I found myself in line for sodas with Jess while Luke's worker steered him into the line. Jess pulled out some waterless hand cleaner while her husband went to get the four of us hot dogs. Ashley, we use this before we eat. Another lady, whose name tag read Gay, turned around. I like your necklaces, she said. I gave her a polite half-smile. Jess quickly redirected my attention and guided me to where we would be sitting. After lunch, another worker said there was someone else she wanted us to meet, but Luke took the opportunity to bolt toward the baseball diamond. Somebody chased him as another woman asked me the usual dumb questions about what grade I was in and what my favorite color was. We're taking Luke back, Mr. Todd said. Do you want to go with us? Sure, I said, because I was sick of potential parents who chatted for a few seconds, then went in search of cuter, younger specimens. Look at all the stuff I won. I showed Mr. Todd my bulging goodie bag. Luke tried to grab it and ripped it. Favors started to fall out. May I help you? A kind-eyed man asked. I want so much stuff that I can't hold it all, I crowed. Wait a sec. The man found a larger bag that had contained brochures and helped consolidate my trinkets. This should do it, said the man with Phil written on his name tag. He carried the bag to the van for me. I figured he was one of the workers from another agency and forgot about him the minute we left the adoption fair. And I think we'll stop there. We're on page 168, and there's a page break here. So we're in the middle of chapter 9 for next time. All right, and hope you're doing well, and I'll see you next time. Bye.